Welcome to the program Leaders Cultivating a Flourishing World. I am Dr. Maricarmen Esper, and this program is to interview colleagues, authors, researchers in the world about the topic of cultivating virtue, of character education, and to help the society and the people to have flourishing lives. Today, I have the honor of interviewing Dr. Michael Lamb from Wake Forest University. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here, Maricarmen. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you so much for your time. I will talk a little bit about the vast curriculum of Dr. Michael Lamb. Dr. Lamb is the FM Kirby Foundation Chair of Leadership and Character, Executive Director of the Program for Leadership and Character, and Associate Professor of Interdisciplinary Humanities at the Wake Forest University. He's also an Associate Fellow of the Oxford Character Project. He earned a BA in Political Science from Rhodes College and a PhD in Politics from Princeton University. Also, he studied a second BA in Philosophy and Theology from the University of Oxford, where he studied as a Rhodes Scholar. He is a recipient of teaching awards from Princeton, Oxford, and Wake Forest. Also, Dr. Lamb, he is the author of the book A Commonwealth of Hope, Augustine's Political Thought, and co-editor of Cultivating Virtue in the University, The Arts of Leading, Perspectives from the Humanities and the Liberal Arts, and also the book Everyday Ethics, Moral Theology and the Practices of Ordinary Life, besides many scientific articles and publications. Before joining Wake Forest, he helped to launch the Oxford Character Project and served as a Dean of Leadership Service and Character Development for Rhodes Scholars. Currently, he is co-directing multi-million grants to educate leadership and character at Wake Forest University and build a national network of colleges and universities focused on educating character. Thank you so much again for your generosity sharing with this program your time.
Great. I'm really grateful to be here, and I think it's going to be a really great conversation, Maricarmen. So thanks for all you're doing to help elevate leaders who care about character and education.
Thank you so much. So let's talk. We have many topics to talk about today, and I'm very excited for this interview. So, Michael, when did you begin your exploration of topics related to character education, virtue, and leadership?
Well, I grew up on a small farm in Tennessee. And when you grow up on a small farm, you learn a lot of character early on as a child. So I was always interested in character and what it meant to live a good life, do the right thing. And then when I went to college, my first semester there at Rhodes College in Memphis, I took a course called Search for Values. And the whole idea of the course was to read these classic texts from our traditions and to understand what are our values? How do we search for them? How do we cultivate virtue and character? And I remember in our first year seminar that we talked a lot about Aristotle's idea of virtue, what it means to sort of cultivate the virtues, and saw different people across history from people in ancient Greece to Martin Luther King Jr. Think about what character was. And I began to really see that you can not only kind of think about character for yourself, you actually could study it and to research it, understand what people in the past have said about it and how it might inform our own lives in the present. And so I became very interested in studying character then. And then when I went to graduate school, I really focused on virtue ethics as an approach to character and to ethical living, and found that the idea of the virtues, the idea that we can cultivate certain key qualities in ourselves, like courage and justice and humility and compassion, was a really helpful way to think about our moral responsibilities as citizens and as potential leaders. And so I just really, for myself, really drawn to it because I want to learn how to live a better life. And for me, having a chance to study the virtues and character was initially a way for me to figure out how I should live myself. And it's now become a way to think about how we can help others think about how to live as well. And so for me, as an educator, as a teacher, the work on character is very personal because it really affects my own journey as a human being and a citizen trying to live a good life.
Thank you. And it's great to share all you have learned in education, in higher education, and in all levels of education. And I have another question. How do you see character education as a central component of education? And also, I want to ask you, what is the role of colleges and universities in shaping the character of students and cultivate virtue at that level?
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a really important question because I think we think about education in different ways. And I think traditionally, character was part of what higher education really aimed to cultivate. In fact, in the US and across Europe, many universities made character a central educational aim of their early efforts. And I think that fell away in the 20th century as universities became more diverse, as we thought about the ways in which research has more of a role, and as you see more economic demands on students trying to get jobs out of college. And so in the 1970s, on some surveys, about 70% of students wanted to develop a meaningful philosophy of life during their time in college, and about 30% wanted to get a job. Now it's the inverse. About 70% want to get a job, and about 30% want to develop a meaningful philosophy of life. And those aren't incompatible, but you see a different trend because of the cost of higher education. More students and parents want to make sure they're getting a good return on their investment in some way. And so character is perhaps seen as less important than certain skills that might make you employable in the job market. And so our real effort at Wake Forest is actually to show that actually character really matters for lots of reasons. And we want students to have good character because it's the right thing to do. We want them to be courageous and just and compassionate. But even beyond that, we really think that cultivating character can help students in various ways in their time during college and beyond. So in the classroom, for example, we think character is a very important part of academic excellence and integrity. We need students to give justice to the sources they cite in an essay, to be honest in their exams and their work, to have integrity there, to have the courage to represent their opinions, even if they're unpopular, the humility to recognize the limits of their own perspectives, the generosity to treat their classmates, kindly in the midst of debate and disagreement. So we think these are really important for even the academic enterprise, but also for forming, good citizens. So I think character has a civic purpose. It also is very important for professional preparation. Many employers now look to hire employees who have strong character and ethical decision making. It's what research shows to be really important for the workplace. And people want to have employees they trust. And character is a very big part of trust. So I think for those reasons, it's really crucial. And also what we've talked about in the past, Maricarmen, is that many students now in university are facing mental health crises. They lack meaning, they lack purpose, they lack meaningful relationships, research shows. And we think that helping develop character in terms of their own sense of humility and resilience and empathy and courage can actually help sort of them address some of their challenges they're facing now in this current moment. So I think character is really important for lots of reasons. And I think that many universities who care about promoting certain values have a reason to educate character very intentionally. And so I think that you see that now as we see across higher education now, across the US and across the UK and Europe and Latin America, more and more universities are looking to intentionally educate character in order to help their students flourish. And I think flourishing is a really important part of this work.
Yeah, and that is very important. That is crucial for the well-being of the student, of the society, of the country, of the world. And I believe this. I am passionate about this topic, and I have been working on this for 30 years. And I published a book in 2007, How to Educate in Ethical Values in Spanish.
Mm.
And it was for that purpose, to intentionally integrate virtues in the classrooms, no matter what subject you're teaching, but for all grade levels. And I included there examples from pre-K to university level, because the goal is the same, to cultivate virtues, but the ages are different. And so maybe sometimes we can use the same strategy, but in different way according to the age or the subject you're teaching. But I'm so happy universities are integrating intentionally character education, virtues cultivation in the US and in the world. And I think with that, and that's my experience when I teach any subject, that the students they say, I have not learned this before in other classes, and we need this for our personal lives and professional lives. So it's very important that we promote this approach in education in the world. So I have another question for you, Michael. How is character education taught within higher education, according to your experience? In what ways can higher education institutions place a greater emphasis on the education of virtues?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a lot of efforts now, really sort of starting around the U.S., for example, and other countries around character in higher education. I think there are various ways we can do it. In my own research, I've focused on 7 strategies that we can use to educate character in different contexts, including habituation through practice, doing things over and over again until you develop that virtue, reflection on experience, engaging with and imitating virtuous exemplars, and seeing role models who embody character in various ways, helping to understand what virtue and character are and how virtues might be understood in different contexts. So virtue literacy. I also think that being aware of our own self, our own situation, and our own sort of larger cultural context is very important for recognizing our own limits and our assumptions and how they might be biasing our action or perception in certain ways. We've talked about the importance of moral reminders, those quotes or passages or pieces of art that remind you how to be an ethical person. And then finally, sort of friendships of accountability. How do we have people in our lives who support us in being our best selves, but also who offer accountability and correction when we might be failing to live up to our ideals? So I think those strategies have been very useful, I think, for higher ed to help students understand that. Now, you can apply those strategies in very different contexts. So at Wake Forest, for example, we teach character in various ways across our university. First, we offer courses on character in different fields and professions. We have faculty who are actually teaching courses on character in law and computer science and entrepreneurship and humanities and other disciplines. So I think the curriculum is very important. We've also trained faculty to integrate character into their courses in different departments. So in the last 5 years, we've trained over 110 faculty at Wake Forest to teach new courses on character and leadership. And that's been very important for us to expand this work across the whole university. So I think the curriculum is very important, but we also think it's very important to engage and reach students beyond the classroom. So we offer courses and programs sort of for students in different areas of campus life to be engaged with us in discussion groups, for example, that are voluntary and that students can be part of on various topics such as what is college for, or how do you engage across differences? We have speakers come to campus to talk about their own experience as leaders of character and what they've learned. We host dinners at night to engage students on big questions of human life and how to live a good and meaningful life. We also have a scholarship program that students are engaged in, and an ambassadors program for our most active students to be part of something in a very deep way. We found that cohort programs that give students a chance to work on character over time and with each other has been a really effective way for us to build character. And then finally, I would just say that we also try to embed character in different parts of campus life. So we work with our campus partners in athletics, in the arts, and other areas of campus.
Michael, I have another question. According to your experience, what are the outcomes of integrating character education in the university level?
Well, I think there are many outcomes. I think students who, for example, have cultivated the virtue of resilience, for example, can often push through difficulties in ways that help them achieve higher academic standards, but also to do more to really maximize their potential when they're in college. So I think you see students who have strong character are really performing better in the classroom in various ways. I think they're also tend to actually have a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. And one thing that research shows now is that many young adults who are facing mental health crises lack meaning and purpose. And in our own work at Wake Forest, for example, I teach a course called Commencing Character, which pairs the study of character with various commencement speeches that are given at graduation. And we found that students in that course, compared to control groups, grew in 11 different virtues and their sense of purpose. And so you see students really growing in the sense of who they want to be, how to use their own skills, their knowledge, their ability to serve a purpose beyond themselves. So I think character really helps orient us beyond ourselves and to the world. So I think it's very important. I also think it's very important to recognize that character, if taught well and intentionally, can also help to increase retention among students. We've had students in our own program and others who've been struggling, and by giving them support and providing mentoring to them beyond just the classroom, they've stayed at Wake Forest and graduated after 4 years. And so I think it can really also help to produce really good outcomes for students to finish their degree and then use that degree to secure meaningful employment that not only sort of serves themselves, but really serves the world. And we see that kind of shift toward focus on humanity because of the work we're doing here to focus on character.
That's beautiful. And it's very important that they live with a mission in life, a purpose in life, and based in virtues cultivation. And that's awesome. And that's very important. That's critical. And we should work hard to promote this approach in the world, because this topic of having a purpose in life, a mission, sense of belonging, feeling loved by somebody and love others is very important for the well-being of the person, the family, and the society. So I have another question. How do you define flourishing, and how does character education contribute to the flourishing of students in university?
You know, at Wake Forest, we think about flourishing as involving the thriving of individuals to help them be their full and best selves. So when they can actually, they have strong sort of sense of purpose and a sense of well-being that really helps them be, you know, able to sort of be not only happy, but to be healthy in various ways, including morally, and feeling like they have a strong identity and a strong sense of purpose. So we think about flourishing in that way, but we also recognize that individual flourishing always depends on the flourishing of the community. So these are always integrated in some way. So we think that individual flourishing really is dependent on a flourishing community, and that communities cannot flourish if the individuals within them are not flourishing. So we think that tie is very important. And so I think that the universities that focus on flourishing can really benefit from making character central, because I think good character helps us build those kind of good relationships that are important for our flourishing, but also for the flourishing of our communities. So, for example, if you want to be a meaningful friend to someone, we want our friends to be kind to us and compassionate and honest and courageous and generous. And so I think if friendship's an important part of what it means to flourish, and research now shows that it is. In fact, one study showed that the most important factor in determining one's success in life was not their job or their income level or their education level, but the quality of their relationships, right? Their friendships. And so we want people to actually have meaningful relationships. Then character is going to be an important part of that process. So I think character is important to flourishing. I think character is a core component of flourishing. And now the research being done now at Harvard by the Harvard Flourishing Program shows that across multiple cultures, across the world, that respondents actually identify character and virtue as one key component of a flourishing life. And so I think it's very important for universities to recognize that and then to help students cultivate the kinds of character that can help them flourish as students, but also as citizens and as human beings.
Yeah, and when I was in my PhD, I found many researchers saying the same thing, that the quality of your relationships, the most important thing, and the virtue cultivation to be successful, to be happy, because the ethics and the virtues are immersed in all the areas of our lives every day.
Right.
As you said at the beginning, how you treat people in the classroom, outside of the classroom, in the hallway. I always say when I train teachers or parents that if you're the teacher for somebody, you will be the teacher forever. Like I just found students that they were my students 30 years ago in high school. And then they shout me in the street, professor, teacher, and I'm so happy. And I said, when I was your teacher, oh, yes, I remember you. And that's very important that we contribute intentionally, professionally, and planned to a flourishing life of our students, the best of our knowledge, no? And so I have another question. I read a very interesting article, and the article Character Education in Universities, a Framework for Flourishing, published by the University of Birmingham at the Jubilee Center for Character and Virtues and the Oxford Character Project, where you have collaborated. So it is noted that all university disciplines have some ethical and characterological expectations attached to them, most notably in terms of research ethics and norms of good academic practice. So please, Dr. Michael Lamb, can you share with us your perspective on this statement?
Well, absolutely. I think that's absolutely right. I think what you see in that the really, really important framework for flourishing in higher education is the ways in which that universities are not neutral institutions. We're already sort of promoting certain values and certain expectations for our students and for our faculty and staff. And so, for example, many universities have honor codes, which are required for committing to being a person of academic integrity in that university. And I think that's really assuming that students care about and value integrity as an important virtue. But also, I think the statement says is that, you know, even to be a good scholar, to be a good student intellectually, requires certain virtues. So, for example, I mentioned earlier, to be a really careful researcher requires giving your sources that you draw on their due, which is a matter of justice, making sure you're citing your sources properly and not taking credit for something that's not your own work. That's an important virtue to be a good researcher. Similarly, a good researcher is humble and recognizes the limits of their knowledge and their perspective to recognize possible alternative explanations or arguments that might help them have a more persuasive and compelling research project. Moreover, it's really good to understand other perspectives, to recognize people have different views on certain issues. So I think empathy is a very important sort of quality for researchers, as well as courage. I mean, to do good research requires doing original work and having the courage defend your ideas that perhaps aren't always popular or perhaps not accepted, and also the resilience to keep going when it's very difficult. So the best researchers actually are hardworking and resilient in the face of a lot of difficult work that's required to do research well. So I think even to be a good researcher and scholar um, relies on certain virtues. And I think what that statement you read says is that even for the purely intellectual parts of what a university does, character matters.
Yeah.
And that faculty who want their students to be careful students and scholars and researchers themselves have a reason to care about character in those ways.
Yeah, and very important to persevere. If you found something in your research, maybe it's against the trending in the world, but we have the duty to promote what we found.
Right.
And do the greater good we can.
That's right.
So, Michael, how can a college or university begin implementing this approach in the institution if somebody's hearing us in any part of the world? What would be your advice?
Well, yeah, I think the first piece of advice is to take the first step. You don't have to do it all at once. Find one way to integrate character into what you're already doing, or even to recognize that what you're already doing probably already is in some way teaching character. So can you be aware of that and therefore be more intentional about doing that? One of the key lessons we've learned in working with faculty at Wake Forest and now through our Educating Character initiative around the country is that many faculty already are educating character in their classrooms or in their programs outside of class, but don't realize how they're doing that.
Yes.
So just being aware of how you might be shaping students to be more humble or to be courageous.
Yes.
Or to be resilient is an important first step. I think secondly is trying new things. And I think some faculty, rightly worry that they weren't trained in graduate school to educate character. They were trained to be a good engineer or historian or scholar of law or literature or social science. But with a little reading and work, you can learn basic tools to actually do this in ways that are really accessible. So we, for example, Wake Forest have an Educating Character initiative. We offer workshops for faculty on how to educate character. We have a website with videos that you can access and a whole set of resources that you can use to learn the basics that make it easier for you to integrate it in your course. And that's a really important piece of this work. So just taking small steps, I think, is very important, and finding one place, whether in one class or one department or even in one program in student life, where you can integrate character in a way that makes sense, can help you kind of see and learn how to do it, and then expand that beyond there. So I think take the first step and don't be afraid to give it a shot.
That's very important. I did my PhD dissertation. The title is Leading Schools Cultivating Flourishing Communities, and I research character education, national schools of character, but every case was different. But like one school started with a club book to check, to learn what is character education, how can we start, and then they hire somebody to train them, and they got funds, etc., and then they are the best. And I wanted to cry when I saw those schools flourishing, where everybody was happy, the teachers, the parents, the students. I was there, and I wanted to see that in all the schools and universities in the world.
I agree. And one thing we really are doing at Wake Forest now, we have this Educating Character initiative that we're leading with support from the Lilly Endowment that really aims to help equip faculty and staff across the U.S. and beyond to educate character in their own context. And so we offer webinars and workshops and conferences. So if anyone listening here wants to be part of that work, we'd love you to go to our website, sign up for our newsletter on the Educating Character Initiative. I guess what I'm saying is if anyone wants to be part of this work in educating character, we'd love them to come across our website, Educating Character Initiative, on the Wake Forest Leadership and Character website, to understand how to get involved in our webinars, our workshops, our conferences. We have a newsletter you can sign up for that will give you a chance to be part of those opportunities.
And we all the world, we are connected now,
We are, yeah.
as we saw in the pandemic. So this project, this program is Leaders Cultivating a Flourishing World, because if we have something good in our hands, in our head, in our heart, we should share it and try all the world to enjoy this approach in education. Another question, Michael, in which dimensions and areas can universities integrate character education initiatives and projects? You already told us some ideas, but I don't know if you want to elaborate a little bit more.
Well, I think one thing I think we've done at Wake Forest is try to find ways to do it both in the curriculum, but also outside of the classroom or in the curriculum. And so,
Okay.
often the curriculum itself requires approval from faculty, and so it can take a little longer to get kind of new courses approved or a new curriculum approved. But I do think that you can do it both in a single course or one course, but also we've done it in different parts of our university, but integrated it throughout a whole department. So, for example, we work with our engineering faculty to make sure that we have one character module in every engineering course. So, over 4 years of education, every engineering student will get character in almost every course they take in the engineering department. So,
But
it's
is
one small intervention.
I'm sorry, is integrating in the subject or direct teaching in a course?
Well, we're doing both, actually. We're doing some where we actually have a subject focused on character in a certain discipline. We also work with different departments like engineering to integrate it throughout into modules throughout every course in the departments. So if you're studying, for example, fluid dynamics in engineering, there's going to be a module in that course showing how character relates to that content. So trying to find creative ways like that. We also do a lot of work outside the classroom. One of the most interesting innovations in our medical school is we've now hired coaches to help every entering medical student develop a character and purpose plan to think about their personal and professional development. So they're in medical school, they're thinking about their purpose, their character, what they need to be a good physician, and then they have a chance to check in with coaches on that throughout their time across medical school. So it helps show that character can be done in various ways. It depends on what your own context makes possible and how to really suit it, make it suit your own context to make it really relevant for your students, faculty, and staff. So character can be done in many ways. The key is trying to find the ways done best in your own context and then working in that way to really shift students' perceptions and activities to be more focused on character.
That's beautiful. And another question, what should university leaders around the world include when implementing character education as part of a university's approach to equip the community with practical wisdom and a sense of flourishing?
Well, I think I mentioned some of those ways that universities might address character. What I would say is it's really important to have university leaders give voice to the importance of character for their university. So I think leaders can do a lot to elevate the importance of character in their speeches or in their written communications to their community, and also sort of create a culture that is conducive to good character formation. So I just published a piece this past year on the moral ecology of the university and how universities are not only sort of sets of courses or programs, they're also a culture and they provide a kind of ecology for growth. And if our ecology is damaged or not really sort of supportive of character, then no matter how we work to form character in the classroom, it won't actually take in the same way. We need cultures that support that. That's through policy, that's through the norms that we create on campus, through how we live out our mission statements and our values. And it's also in our relationships that we encourage faculty and staff to have with our students. So I think the whole culture, I think, is one thing that university leaders have a very good perspective on and can really emphasize in how they think about character across an entire university.
And I have seen different cases. I think a lot of the weight of a program is in the hands of the leader, like the president of a university, the principal of a high school, the leaders. But also I have seen that a good teacher can start this. And
Right.
then the principal or the president or the leader of the institution see the goodness and the possible great outcomes of this, and then it start to be an institution approach.
I agree. I think the best approaches integrate both top-down leadership, where the president or the provost or the dean is really elevating character, and bottom-up engagement from faculty. Without the bottom-up engagement, it becomes just the president's or the provost's idea, which won't really take hold in a university. So without bottom-up engagement, it actually won't actually get done. So I think that you need both of those things, and they can happen in different ways in different institutions. So I think that collaboration is essential, Maricarmen, to make this work really sustainable across an entire university culture.
And as you said in one of the questions, is we need a flourishing community, but also
Right.
community flourishing lives,
Right.
personal, and both the flourishing lives and the flourishing community help each other. And the flourishing community is built by flourishing lives, but we need a
Right.
good environment. We need a
Right.
good ambience and a good school climate and culture.
Right.
So I have the last question is, what message would you offer, Dr. Michael Lamb, to higher education leaders and practitioners in fostering a flourishing world?
Mm. Well, I think, I would say that character matters. It matters for our students, it matters for our institutions, and it matters for our society. And the more that we can do to actually help students develop key virtues of character like courage, compassion, humility, empathy, the more we can do actually to help serve humanity and prepare them to navigate the complex challenges we face as a society. I think the more that we have citizens of strong character, the better we will flourish together as human beings.
Thank you so much. And I want to share some of your books so you can talk a little
Mm,
bit about them.
great, great. Excellent. Well, these are books, thanks, Maricarmen, that the last few years that we've published. The first one there is A Commonwealth of Hope, and it's about the role of hope in politics, and it draws on inspiration from St. Augustine, a very influential thinker in Western history and philosophy and religion, who thinks about hope as a virtue of character that we need to actually be able to orient ourselves toward the good, both here and now and beyond. The second book there, Cultivating Virtue in the University, is an edited volume that my colleagues from Oxford and I published in 2022. And it includes various scholars talking about the importance of character from different disciplines, from history and philosophy to psychology, as well as other fields. And it includes in that volume the chapter that we wrote on 7 strategies to educate character that is often now used to think about building university programs. So if you want to learn about those strategies, you can find them there in that book. We also published with an editor, Brian Williams, at Eastern University, a book on everyday ethics about how we can understand ethics, not just as these hard cases that we might have to navigate, but actually ordinary practices
Yeah.
that we do every day, from eating to using technology that shape our character and form us to be certain kinds of people. And so being more aware of those practices can help us actually form ourselves in ways toward the good. And so it's been really fun for me to think about how to collaborate with colleagues, to think about character, and to share those insights with others around the world.
All these books are excellent, and I think we can use for our personal life to start everyday ethics, moral theology, and the
Mm,
practices of the ordinary life, as you said, starting with our own lives, and then try to spread the word. And I want to thank you so much for your kindness, for your generosity, for being humble and sharing with all of us your wisdom, Michael. And thank you so much for all the great job you and Wake Forest are doing in the world. And I wish all the leaders, institutional leaders, political leaders, civic leaders, society leaders, we cultivate the virtues, the ethics in everyday life and lead for a flourishing world. Thank you so much. And
Thank you, Maricarmen.
I hope to have another interview later on.
Well, I look forward to that. I'm really grateful for our time today and for all you're doing to really elevate questions of character for our world. I think character is vital to flourishing, and we need leaders who have the character to help lead us toward a more flourishing world. So thanks for all you're doing, Maricarmen, to really share this message and to sort of create a platform for people to understand why character matters so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.